Hi, I'm Tori Nook, and today Bob Knakal is joining me here on the Tori Nook Talk Show. He's one of the most recognized deal makers in North American commercial real estate, and he's a strategist who's helped shape the New York City's investment and sales landscape for 4 decades. He's a Wharton graduate who entered the business in 1984. Bob has personally brokered the sale of 2,388 New York City properties, representing roughly $22 billion in market value. In 1988, Bob co-founded Massey Knakal, the firm known for revolutionizing the market through hyper-local territory expertise, intensive training, and servant leadership culture, ultimately selling over 6,000 New York City properties and later being acquired in 2014. Bob went on to lead New York investment sales at major global firms, and today he's back in founder mode as the chairman and CEO of BKREA in New York City. Beyond the business, he's deeply committed to philanthropy, especially causes serving disadvantaged children. And at home, Bob is a husband and father. Welcome to the show, Bob.
Tori, so great to be with you today. Thank you so much for having me on. And hello, everybody out there.
Yes. So I met Bob exactly a year ago, and I'm part of Bob's monthly calls. Bob, of all different things that you're doing with mentoring people, and it's been a great experience. And one of the things I really want to dig into with you today is, you're known as a major force in New York investment sales. And when you strip away all the titles and the deal volume, what do you believe your real gift is in the marketplace?
Yeah, Tori, I think it's very, very simple, actually. I always say that brokerage business is a very simple business. It's just very, very hard.
Yes.
And I think the difficulty that comes into play is that you have to really be able to create a niche for yourself where you're a true market expert in something, some aspect of the business, and really get to know every single aspect of it. You have to love it because you're always going to go through tough times, no matter how good you are. Market has always been cyclical, will always be cyclical. And the third thing is, I think you have to be able to use discipline well. So I think if what you're getting at is, what's my secret sauce? What has made me who I am?
Yes, and it
I
truly
think
went.
that definitely have a love for the business. I think I've tried to look at the marketplace very analytically,
Okay.
always talking about the market, current conditions, trends, et cetera, using statistics rather than adjectives. And God has blessed me with tremendous energy.
Yeah.
And I use that energy in a very disciplined way. And look, there are a number of things that we do on a day-to-day basis as brokers, but the fact is that there's nothing that is a more productive revenue-generating activity than making calls. And I absolutely love to make calls. So I think using that discipline to keep making calls and realizing, when you get hung up on many times in a row, you can't get down. You have to feel good because all that's doing is getting you closer to a yes. It's all a probability-based business. So I think those are the things that I truly love the business. I'm able to use discipline fairly well. Just realizing that if you keep at it, good things will happen, provided you're doing fundamentally the correct things. And so I think that's been a big part of my personal success.
I love that you're emphasizing the fact to pick up the phone, because I think that's the biggest thing, even for me owning my company, is pushing, I'd say the 30s and under to pick up the phone. And even sometimes, with anybody, because you get so much free information on the phone, you get other leads from picking up the phone. And I think it takes up to 7 times to sometimes even get people to call you back. It's been a big rule of thumb. So,
well, Tori, interestingly, I think that the skill of being able to do well on the phone is going to diminish over time. Because I know you mentioned I have a daughter, I have a 17-year-old daughter. She'll sit at the same table with friends and they text each other. These kids are not, I always say, hey, just call, find out.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, the kids are so used to gadgets today that I think a lot of the interpersonal skills are lost.
I agree.
And so I think it's going to be more and more of a challenge for folks to pick up the phone. If they won't pick up the phone and call their friend, are they going to pick up the phone and call somebody they don't know that might hang up on them or yell at them or whatever? So, you know,
Right. No, that's very true. And I think that's the hardest part with even when I was younger, it is hard to pick up the phone and knowing that that's going to happen. I mean, you just have to know.
right.
But it gets better as you keep doing it, and nothing's perfect in life. So I want to go back to 1988 when you and your partner at the time, Paul, left CB to start Massey Knakal. What was the internal conversation you had in order that you needed to do to like win the market? Meaning, what fear did like you have to face that most people won't admit? Because it's a big leap to take.
Yeah, well, I think we benefited from being young and naive. I think we didn't know a lot of the trials and tribulations that we'd have to go through, and
Mm-hmm.
fortunately, we actually got very lucky.
Okay.
We started in the business in 1984,
Mm-hmm.
and wanted to start the company in 1986. Uh,
Okay.
and went down to our banker at Chemical, what was then Chemical Bank,
I remember Chemical.
and said, "Hey, we need 500 grand to start a business. We're hotshot young kids. Where do we sign?"
Mm-hmm.
And of course, our banker laughed at us and said, "Hey, guys, that's not the way it works. Go start your company. Come back with a 3-year track record. We'll talk about a revolving credit line, et cetera, et cetera." We were dejected. And for the next 2 years, sat down every day and talked about the deals we had under contract and how much we were going to take off the top of every deal we were doing to save up our money.
Okay.
And it actually saved us because when we started the company in 1988, the S&L crisis was right around the corner. So we didn't have time to get big enough. I remember
Okay.
back in the early days, our burn rate was only about 15 grand a month.
Got
Uh,
it.
and had we started in '86, our burn rate might have been 25 or 30,000 a month.
Right.
And we barely scraped through the S&L crisis with $1,000 a month burn rate. So, sometimes you get lucky in life. And, Paul and I definitely were very lucky that, Massey Knakal almost went bankrupt 3 times during the S&L crisis. But it was an interesting time and lots of fear, but we overcame a lot of the fear with a lot of confidence in ourselves, a lot of courage, and a lot of naivete, I would say.
For sure. And I think that's a very good point. Because I think I feel the same way, but starting my own business because I had to do it like under fire and you don't have enough time to think and psychoanalyze. Because I was going to even ask you two things. How old were you both then at the time?
When we started the company, Paul was 28, I was 26.
Okay. So you're in your late
Paul was 2
20s.
years older than me, but
Mm-hmm.
he graduated college a year late, and then he was in a training program at CB
Okay.
for a year before he got into sales. And then a couple of weeks after he had gotten into sales, I came on board and started.
Mm-hmm.
My first day, the boss said, "Hey, Massey just got into sales. Follow him around. He'll show you where the coffee machine is," and that kind of thing. And
Nice.
that
Yeah.
was, became very clear at the time. CB had about 60 brokers leasing office space, about 20 in the
Mhm.
retail leasing division.
Okay.
And there were 4 guys in the investment sales world, 3 who
Mhm.
had about 20 years of experience, and then Paul. And it was clear to us that the guys with 20 years of experience weren't going to spend a lot of time with us. So,
Right.
literally, day 2 on the job, we said to each other, "Hey, let's just work together, split everything 50-50, see how it goes." And that was the start of a 30-year partnership.
That's amazing story. And then thinking about fear, did you let fear get in the way? Like, did you think about even when you just first decided to start the company, not the 3 times it almost went bankrupt? That's a whole other level of fear when you're in. But before you got started, did you ever think about what would it mean if I failed? If this didn't
No,
work or didn't
Tori,
work at
think
all?
about it. We're 26 and 28. Neither of us
Yeah.
were married. Neither of us had kids.
Hmm.
It's the it's an opportune time to take on risk, but we
Right.
never really felt fearful. I don't remember ever feeling afraid. I
Okay.
remember like, how are we going to figure this out? I
Hmm.
remember one time at the start of the S&L crisis, we had 15 grand in the bank,
Okay.
nothing under contract. And we're like, what the heck do we do? our burn rate is $15,000 a month. Do we pay $5,000 each month for 3 months and keep the lights and the phones on? Do we spend all the money next month and hope something good happens? Do we go to Atlantic City and put it all on black, and which we did really think about for a couple of seconds?
Yeah.
But we decided, hey, we have really good credit. Let's go out and get credit cards. And we went to one bank and got a $2,000 line, and went to another bank and got a $4,000 line. And
Mhm.
between the two of us, we got an aggregate of $60,000 in credit cards. Those credit cards were 4 months of burn for our company.
Right.
So that was a great cushion. And I never was fearful. It was always, all right, how we're in a pickle, how are we going to get
Mhm.
out of it? Let's figure it out. And so fear was never a word I would use to describe anything that we went through. We certainly went through some tough times.
Mhm.
At one time we had the $60,000 credit cards maxed out, and we had
Okay.
no deal under contract, and went to a good client to try to borrow $75,000 from him. And he would give us the money, but wanted 50% of the stock in the business. We went to
Oh,
Paul's
wow.
stepfather-in-law at the time, who ran a mortgage brokerage business out in New Jersey, and said, hey, his name
Mhm.
was Jack Collar. We said, Jack, we need 75 grand. We'll give you 25% of the stock in the business. And remarkably, and I always say luck has played a big role in my life. Jack said, guys, I'm going to give you the 75. Someday you're going to be very successful. Don't give me the equity. You'll be mad that you did. And that got us through. And so, we ran the company on credit cards for, a good 3 or 4 years.
Okay. Wow.
And
That's
I
long.
ran my personal life. At the time, I had gotten so addicted to credit cards that I had lines of about $180,000 in credit cards.
Oh
And so
my.
from 1988 to 1998, my net worth bounced around from
Yeah.
between 0 and minus 180,000. But all the while, I never really would say I was fearful about
Mhm.
anything. It was more, all right, how are we gonna get out of this?
You partnered with him on a strategy. No different than you would with your wife at home about something when things are happening. That's
Yep.
that's really good advice, because when you strategize, you start thinking of ideas and things start getting rolling. And God bless his stepfather. What a good man.
Yep.
Wow.
Yep. Well, we named our salesperson of the year award after Jack, and gave it out every year for 26 years. So very,
Awesome.
very grateful for the kindness that he showed
Mm.
us. And I always say,
Yes.
in life, you have to be a little lucky sometimes. A lucky
Mhm.
break, a lucky relationship, a lucky thing that happens. And I believe
100%.
the harder you work, the luckier you get. But you have to have a little bit of luck on your side also.
Oh, for sure. And Jack was definitely an angel planet on this earth. That's for sure. When Massey Knakal, that company didn't just grow. You both rewrote the playbook with territory experts and deep training. What was a core insight that made you certain that that model would dominate?
Yeah, it just made sense to us. We said,
Mhm.
I think part of the benefit of being two young kids that started in the business here in New York is that you were so overwhelmed by the sheer size of it. I mean,
Right.
there are 175,000 investment properties in the four boroughs
Mhm.
in Staten Island.
Mhm.
And I mean, that's a massive, massive amount of properties. And so we didn't try to figure out everything at once. We said, let's take a little piece
Okay.
and really dig in, get to know everything about this little neighborhood. And the traction we got was very, very significant. And I remember we had a pitch of we had only sold 3 buildings,
Mhm.
and we were pitching against companies that were well established, that had been around for a while. And we went into an owner, and they literally said, "Guys, you've only sold 3 buildings. Why should I hire you?"
Okay.
And we said, well, yeah, we've only sold 3 buildings, but we know this neighborhood better than anybody. Market reports we put together for you are probably more detailed than anybody has given you. And
Mm.
the 3 buildings we sold, one was down the block, one was across the street, and one was right next door to you. We know more about this neighborhood than anybody, and we could be a better advocate for you in terms of convincing
Right.
a buyer why they should pay more for the property. And
Mhm.
the traction just started. And so when we started MK, we grew the company like a jigsaw puzzle, putting people to the north of us and south of us and east and west of us. And that system really worked. So, we had a very, very narrow value proposition. We only sold properties. We only represented sellers. We only worked
Right.
on exclusives, only
Mm-hmm.
worked in our territories.
Mm-hmm.
And that just snowballed. And the
Mm-hmm.
thing, I'm proud of a lot of things that Massey Knakal did. I mean, CoStar started tracking the market in 2001,
Okay.
and from 2001 to 2014, when we sold the company, the number two firm in New York had sold about 1,300 properties. We sold over 4,000. So
Wow.
we lapped the field by more than 3x for 14 years in a row. Proud of that. We started the business with just the two of us and a secretary. And, as I said, went through some challenging times at the
Right.
beginning, and then ended up selling the company for $100 million to Cushman in
Mm-hmm.
2014. I'm proud of that. But, not only did we have a great platform and system with the territory system, but we ran the firm with a servant leadership mentality,
Right.
encouraging our people, training our people, building their self-esteem,
Mm-hmm.
making them believe they could do better than even they thought they could. And
Right.
as a result, today in the investment sales world, there are 34 companies or divisions of companies that are owned by or run by people that learned the business at Massey Knakal. And that by far and away is the thing I'm the most proud of,
Huge.
because
Yeah,
we
that's a huge
we
accomplishment.
profoundly change people's lives for the better. And, that is extraordinarily rewarding.
What did you do? Because you didn't just have salespeople. I mean, you literally built real experts in the industry. And what did you do the key thing to help build people's self-confidence?
Well, number one, I find it interesting that when you look at job satisfaction surveys,
Right.
people would think that money is the number one thing. It almost never is.
Mm-hmm.
Almost always the number one trait that leads to job satisfaction is feeling like what you're doing is accretive to the company achieving its goals and achieving success. And so we made everybody feel that way, certainly our top producers,
Mm-hmm.
but the guy that worked in the mailroom stuffing mail. I mean, back before email became popular, we were sending out 3 million pieces of hard mail a year.
Wow.
And so when Harold, the guy who worked in our mailroom, would bundle everything up with the same zip code on everything, we'd save 6 cents a piece on the postage.
Oh.
And this guy took such pride in what he did. And, we'd go down to the mailroom and say, Harold, we got to tell you, you're doing such an awesome job. Thank you for caring so much about what you do. You're
Mm-hmm.
a vitally important part of this company. And the pride that he would have, that when he
Right.
bundled those stacks of mail, the corners
Mm-hmm.
were perfectly sharp. He really went above and beyond to continue to get that good feeling. And we did that with our receptionists and people up and down the line who worked for us. And I think when people get that positive feedback and feel like what they're doing is helping, and
Mm-hmm.
hey, I am really doing a great job to help this company succeed, I think it gives them confidence that enables them to achieve things greater than even they imagined.
That's beautiful. Because I think a lot of places don't talk people up. People don't even know what they're doing. I mean, some people don't even have reviews, even where they work. So they have no idea what's going on.
Mm.
From 2001 through 2014, like you're at the top year after year. What was the invisible discipline that kept you from getting complacent when you're on top, you're winning, you're successful?
Yeah, well, I think I did get a little bit complacent around 2011.
Okay.
Uh, and then I met Rod Santomassimo, my broker coach.
Hmm.
So I get a call one day.
And co-author of your book.
He's co-author of my book. So Rod calls me up and says, "Hey, Bob, I'm writing this book called Brokers Who Dominate.
Hmm.
Everybody I'm talking to says I have to include you in the book. Would you want to be interviewed for the book?" And of course, what broker is not going to want to be in a book with that title?
Right.
So I say yes, and I'm talking to him, and we're doing several phone interviews. And I got around to ask him, "So, Rod, how many books have you written? What do you write about?" And he's like, "Oh, this is my first book. I'm not a writer. I'm a broker coach." And I
Okay.
said, broker coach? What's a broker coach? I never heard of it. And he explained to me what he did in terms of coaching brokers. And it occurred to me, I said, at the time, I said, you know what? Michael Jordan has a coach. Tiger Woods has a coach. Olympic
Hmm.
athletes have coaches. I'm going to give this a try. And working with Rod did two things. I remember when we got together, I said, Rod, I'm happy with the money I'm making.
Hmm.
I have at the time, I had a 3-year-old daughter. Sophie was 3. And I said, I really want to spend more time with my wife and daughter. And if
Right.
you can keep me making the same money, but able to spend more time with my family, that's the objective. And a year later, I had tripled my income and was spending more time with my wife and daughter. And it was really because he taught me systems that made me more effective and efficient, and he rekindled my passion for the business. And I think that part of what we do is, and part of what's great about coaching is that you're
Mhm.
directly accountable to somebody.
Have you done it every year since with Rod?
Yeah, he's still my
Okay.
coach. I talk to him every Saturday
You
morning.
didn't
We're
take a
on
break
for
or
an
anything?
hour.
Okay.
I will, to the extent he'll keep putting up with me, he'll be my coach for the rest of my career.
That's really good to know because I think people see people on top and they think they just know it all, but people don't realize people have coaches and consultants.
No, Tori, no, nobody knows it all. Nobody
Yeah.
knows it all. And if you think
No,
you do, you're making a mistake.
big one.
And one of the many aspects that I find so beneficial about coaching is that I know that I don't know everything. And I know
Right.
I don't know the best way to do everything. And if there's some kid in Topeka, Kansas that comes up with a better way to do something in this business, I want to know about it as soon as possible. I
Hmm.
figure working with the Massimo group and working with Rod is going to make that information available to me much sooner than if I wasn't.
Right. Right. Exactly. I want to go to the hard part. We already talked about the 3 times you thought you were going to go bankrupt. Was that your toughest professional season when it felt like the climb could almost,
No, not toughest part. And interestingly, I think from a real estate perspective, the toughest market was absolutely the savings and loan crisis in the early 90s.
okay.
But the GFC in 08, 09, that
Hmm.
was the toughest part for me
Okay.
personally, mainly because, we had run the business very much like a family business. We knew everybody's spouse's name. We knew the kids' names. We knew where they went to college. We knew the pets' names. We had company events where you brought your spouse, you brought your kids, you brought your pet.
Hmm.
And so we really ran it like a small company.
Okay.
And we, in '07, we almost sold the business to CB. CBRE offered us $50 million in 2007.
Okay.
And for a variety of reasons, that didn't work out. But then the GFC hits, and then we get into a situation where we have to fire 25% of our employees. And we had 250 people at the time. So, you're letting 60, 70 people go. Oh my gosh, it was gut wrenching.
Wow.
Um,
Yes.
and I think that was the number one reason why, after my contract was up at Cushman and Wakefield, we sold to Cushman in
Right.
2014. It was on a 5-year contract there that got shortened to 3.5 years because they breached the contract.
Right.
People ask me why I didn't start a new business then.
Mm.
And I really think because the pain that we went through in 08, '09 of having to let so many people down was so sharp, still so fresh, that I just didn't have the intestinal fortitude to do it. So we, went to the big firm, thinking that, hey, a big global firm, if the market gets soft again, this was in 2018, market
Mhm.
gets soft, the big firm will be there to backstop us, and not knowing that, big public companies, the minute the stock price goes down by 2 cents, the bells and whistles go off, and they'll cut
Yeah.
before the private companies will. So, um, but it was the right thing at the time. But that was by far and away, emotionally, the toughest time was the GFC 08, '09, because we're sitting there, the company's probably worth between $0 and $2 million. We had been offered 50 million, and we're firing people and who knows what the heck is going to happen. Lehman Brothers fails, AIG
Right.
fails. uh, you're like, what the heck is going on? And that was a very, very challenging time. But we stuck to our knitting.
Hmm.
We kept the territory system in place. We were growing. As soon as the market started to come back, we rehired a bunch of those folks again. And but that, without a doubt, not from a broker's production point of view, but
Okay.
from an emotional point of view, 0809 was by far the toughest thing that I had gone through in my career.
Do you feel like there were any mistakes that you still remember, not because it was expensive, but it forced you to change how you lead and decide? Because that sounds like
Hundreds.
a way to.
The biggest mistake we ever made when we were younger, we didn't like seek out older, more experienced people to ask questions about how to do things. We did almost
Okay.
everything by trial and error. And so consequently, we made hundreds of mistakes,
Okay.
hundreds. And fortunately, we didn't make a lot of them twice, but so many mistakes. I think we waited too long to hire people to take over functions that were taking us away from producing.
Okay.
Um, I remember every time we hired someone, whether it was our director of HR,
Hmm.
or our CFO or our COO or anyone that relieved us from administrative work, all of a sudden we had so much more free time and we were so much more productive as salespeople.
Right.
So that was a big one also. But then that's tough because you're a little nervous. Do I spend the
Right.
money? And you don't really realize that, hey, you're going to pay $250,000 to that person to do that, but then you're
Right.
going to make $700,000 in more production because of the time that it frees up for you. So a lot of
Yes.
those kind of things that were very eye opening.
Very, for sure. I mean, you're famously very analytical and strategic in what you do. I mean, we're in real estate, but like, let's talk about intuition. Like, where does intuition show up for you in real estate? I mean, is there a story where the data was unclear, or it could have been really clear, but your gut said something different? Did
Mm,
you go off your
no,
gut versus?
it's not like this business is not an empirical one. So I
Mhm.
guess that intuition comes into play a little bit, but I don't know that I could specifically mention a moment where the numbers said one thing and I decided to do the other.
Mhm.
Maybe with the hiring of people.
Okay,
You know,
that
I
aspect.
I think that one of the things that guided us very well with hiring people was looking at personality and likability.
Okay.
There were several things that we think were very indicative of how someone would do, or at least put the probability high that they would succeed.
Okay.
Competitive spirit, team sports, captain of the debate team, editor of the school paper, class president, something where you showed excellence in a competitive environment. And, we didn't really, I never really looked so much at what schools somebody went to or what their grade point average was. It always was after our HR people met with folks, we'd always say, look, after the meeting was over, did you feel like you'd love to go have a drink with this person or go have a meal with this person? And if you didn't say, yeah, I'd love to go do that right now, you can't offer them a job.
Right.
And we've seen it at every end of the spectrum. We hired in the 90s, we hired the valedictorian from Harvard.
Okay.
We thought he was going to be a superstar, and the guy flamed out. 9 months later, he's out of the business.
Right.
To law school. And then two of our top salespeople never graduated from college. One barely got out of high school, and the
That's
guy
no surprise
million
because
million
salesmen.
dollar a year guy. But he's the
Right.
kind of person you sit with him for 15 minutes, you feel like you've known him your whole life, and he's your lifelong
Right.
friend. And we always said that you don't want to hang out with those people. Clients aren't going to want to go hang out with those people. So
Right.
likability, I think, is a very underrated quality and something that actually should be taught in colleges. Likability, salesmanship, human
Oh,
behavior, persuasion, those types of things, because those things are going to get you much further in life than most of what folks learn in college.
Oh, 100%. I mean, in college, they do not teach you how to be an amazing. I mean, it's funny because my husband said the same thing at his company. His best salespeople didn't even graduate from college. Like, when you meet them and you love them and they've got that just geared up personality and they keep going because that's what you need, the energy and the high vibe, right? To be good at sales. Was there ever a time like you ever ignored like an signal about anyone that cost you time, money, peace, relationship?
I mean, there were a couple of times we hired people who were like kids of clients,
Oh, yeah, I hear
and
this a lot.
those were mostly disasters.
Yes.
Whenever you hire somebody without looking at them
Mhm.
very myopically and just look at them for who they are and not thinking, well, then we'll get more business from the dad or because you're forced to do it. I think that's when you make mistakes.
Okay.
I don't can't think of a lot of times. A lot of the mistakes we made were simply not going on intuition, but just not having the forethought to ask folks who had been there and done that.
Right. Seeking elders advice.
Yeah, I mean later on, and I think '06, we formed an advisory board
Okay.
of senior people from different industries. We had, our labor lawyer Paul Salvatore from Proskauer Rose
Okay.
was a member. Michael McVicker, the guy who ran the trading desk at Morgan Stanley, was on it. Steve Siegel, who is the chairman of global brokerage at CBRE. John Fowler from HFF.
Okay.
Ofer Yordani, who's a client who buys apartment buildings. We had all a mix of people with tremendous, tremendous experience. They helped us dramatically. I wish we had formed that advisory board from the very beginning.
Good good advice. Very interesting. Yeah, it makes sense. So, in business, nothing's ever 100% certain, as we know. We never know if deals close till the check's in the bank. But, where does your like faith, resilience, perseverance like actually show up like in your life? Like what practices do you have?
No, rightly or wrongly, um, I work a lot. I always say that this job for me is my profession and it's also my hobby. I have
Mhm.
friends who will go out and play 2 or 3 rounds of golf every
Right.
weekend. I don't.
You
My
don't.
life is very simple. I spend as much time with my wife and daughter as I can. I go
Okay.
to the gym, I go to church, and I sell buildings. That's it. And I love doing it. And so I think my affinity for the business um, is such that I really get tremendous positive feedback from the business. If you think about it, in the
Mhm.
course of a sale transaction, there are many micro wins that you
Right.
get. You find out the building's for sale, you feel great. You give the pitch and do a good job, you feel great. You find out you won the pitch, you feel great. You market the property and get a good bid, you feel great. You get the contract signed, you feel great. You close the deal, you feel great. That's one deal. We have
Right.
73 deals that we're marketing now. So
Right.
there's many, many chances along the way to win. And I think that positive feedback is something that keeps me going. And, you had mentioned that, I saw last week, as a matter of fact, sold deal number 2,388.
Okay.
I'm a big baseball fan. I always love statistics, and
Right.
I'd love to get to 3,000 sales.
Mhm.
Maybe that's going to be 10 years from now or 20 years from now, but I don't plan to ever retire and just want to keep going. I truly, truly enjoy what I do.
What like as a husband and father, how do you protect that family time? Cuz we all know when we work, we could work 24/7. So how do you keep boundaries with
I think
yourself?
by living an intentional life, not to be kind of a cork on the ocean and just go where things take you. You have to
Right.
be very intentional about making time for what's important to you. And it's interesting. I think a lot of people would look at me and say, "Oh, this guy, he works too much. He's out of balance." And
Mhm.
work-life balance is a very, very personal thing. It's
Correct.
different for everybody. And I say,
Right.
the best way to figure out what the right balance is for you is pretend you just got hit by a bus.
Mm-hmm.
And you're going to write the eulogies of 5 people that are going to talk at your funeral: your spouse, your child, your best friend, somebody from your church or synagogue, somebody from your gym, a client, and have them write the eulogies that you want them to say. You've just written the blueprint for your life, and you've
Right.
written what the right work-life balance is for you.
Mm-hmm.
And so, my faith is very important to me. My health is very important to me. So I make sure that I fit time in for those things. And I try to work as much as I can. I try to spend as much time as possible with my wife and daughter. And, again, very, very simple things that I focus on. And I'm very at peace with the time allocation that I make amongst the different things that are important to me in my life.
And also, you're very philanthropic. I mean, that's been a constant as well in your life too. What drives that, and what impact matters like the most to you now?
Well, I think I've always tried to focus on helping disadvantaged kids with particularly educational stuff. And I think it stems from realizing how lucky we all are.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't choose to be born to the family we were born to, or the
Right.
country we were born to, or whatever. Any of us could have been born in a mud hut somewhere. So, one of the things that just really shocked me, I grew up in northern New Jersey, small town, come to the big city, wanted to take over the world. And I got involved with an organization called Ice Hockey in Harlem, which is
Okay.
an after school program for kids in Harlem. If they came to our classes after
Hmm.
school, then they could play ice hockey in our hockey program for free. And, it was a game in Harlem. You don't think of kids playing hockey, but it was a great program and got kids in the classroom, taught them a new sport, taught them teamwork and that kind of stuff. And every year I would, I became ultimately the president of Ice Hockey in Harlem. I was for about 15 years, but in the one of the early years, I would buy Thanksgiving dinner for 3 or 4 of the families.
Oh, nice.
And these were mostly single parent
Right.
households. So I remember one family, they had 2 kids in the program, but it was a mom, a grandmom, and
Okay.
3 children in their apartment. And so, that was 5 people. I think I bought them dinner for like 7 or 8 people, figuring they'd have leftovers and everything else. So
Right.
buy them the Thanksgiving dinner. And I ran into the mom at one of our practices, and I said, "Oh, how was it?" She said, Thank you, Bob. Appreciate the meal. It was great." And I said, "Well, we got a little extra, so hopefully you enjoyed the leftovers." And she said, "Oh, that was so nice of you, but we had to give it away because we don't have a refrigerator in our apartment."
Oh,
So, you think about, we wake up in the morning and go to the refrigerator for orange juice,
right.
not ever thinking, how lucky am I? I have a fridge in my house.
Right. Exactly.
So that was so impactful on me that I really felt like, you know what, you're so lucky. Help out folks who need a little bit of a hand.
Mm, What you're building in this chapter of your life, who are you becoming as you build it, and what legacy do you want to leave?
Well, the new company is a lot of fun, very exciting.
It is.
I have transformed pretty significantly in 2 ways. One, I was always a generalist selling all kinds of properties.
Mhm.
Today, we're focused on everything you can do with a vacant building. What do you do with a vacant building in New York? You knock it down and build a new building.
Right.
You renovate the heck out of it and change the use, or you sell it to a user who's going to occupy it for their own purposes. And we're really becoming an expert. I use as an analogy often that, if you were out exercising and you rip your Achilles in your knee, and you
Hmm.
see 2 doctors, and one says, "Oh, ACL, no problem. I've
Right.
done knees, I've done shoulders, elbows, wrists, ankles. I can do it all."
Right.
Or you go to somebody who says, "Yeah, I've done 9,263 knee ACLs. It's all I do."
Right.
Who are you going to have surgery with?
Yeah.
So I We have the company doing, focusing on that one area of expertise. And we also have changed, we've inverted our philosophy where in the past we would go a mile wide and an inch deep in terms of our prospecting. Today we're going an inch wide and a mile deep. And we've created the Knakal Map Room, which has been probably the greatest single marketing thing I've ever done in my career.
Wow. Yeah.
Over the course of my career, I've won about 26% of my pitches in the Knakal Map Room. We've given 75 pitches. We've gotten 73 exclusives.
Amazing stats.
Yeah, so it's been great. So what am I doing? What's the legacy now? I really would like. I'm very, very proud of those 34 companies or divisions of companies run by people that I helped get started in the business. I would like that number to grow. And I think there are folks in my company now, and I certainly hope that they stay with me for many, many, many years. But I know at some point in the future, they're going to be running their own businesses or divisions of big companies. And, that to me is such a great reward, because I know at some point they'll say, hey, that Knakal guy helped me a little bit.
Right. Well, any final words before we wrap up?
No, I just think that for folks in our business, it's so great and so empowering to understand that real estate is one of the purest forms of meritocracy there is.
Yes.
You get out of it exactly what you put into it. And if you want to go all in and work really hard and do the right things and stick to it and invoke discipline into what you're doing and become an expert, there's no limit to what you can achieve. There's the expression, the sky's the limit.
Yeah.
In commercial real estate, there is no limit.
Right.
So, I just think it's the greatest business in the world, and so lucky. I feel so lucky that I stumbled into this business.
Absolutely. I'm so lucky to meet you and be on your affiliate calls and learn as well, and being mentored by the best. And you're a real blessing to, I think, this whole industry and everyone who meets you or hears a podcast or reads an interview on you. You're very insightful, and not just business, but your personal life too, and keeping it all, we're not going to say balanced because nothing's ever perfectly balanced, but aligned. So that wraps up today's episode of the Tori Nook Talk Show. Bob, I want to greatly express thank you too for joining me today and for sharing not just the highlights, but the mindset behind the longevity, the discipline you have, the discernment, the resilience that you've had in so many cases, and the way you've led through seasons that weren't easy, and also leading top performers. If you enjoyed this conversation with Bob Knakal, from building a dominant culture in New York City investment sales to stepping back into founder mode with BKREA, to the role that faith, perseverance, and even synchronicities can play in a life and career, make sure you subscribe. And Bob, tell everyone where they can find you.
Sure. Thanks, Tori. Well, you can always find me on social media. I'm on all of the major platforms, or you can email me at bk@bkrea.com, or call me on my cell phone, 917-509.
Awesome. Yeah, I love following Bob. So follow him on all his channels. He does amazing videos and has tons of his Knakal nuggets. And if this episode gave you any clarity, confirmation, please leave a review and click subscribe, and feel free to email me as well. I'm on all the social channels. And thank you. I really appreciate it, Bob.
Tori, I'm happy to know you. Thank you so much for having me on.
Yeah. Take care.